that are here for students. The parents get very similar information during that same orientation session, so there can be dialogue between the parents and the students. Our housing program also has what we call living learning communities. So students who have similar majors are grouped in the same residence hall. So there's a way for them to know the students that they're going to be interacting with and to make that social connection as well as the academic connection. And then if if problems begin to develop, our counseling services area offers some online screenings for depression and anxiety. If there is perhaps some discomfort with the idea of going to see a counselor, that's a good first step for a student. But the therapists, the counselors that are there are extremely approachable, they're very welcoming, and they're there to help students with something, as seemingly minor as homesickness on through the more significant major depression and other mental health illnesses.
And I think that's so important, because what I'm hearing you say, I think is very important, which is that it isn't all, some of it is homesickness, and it's okay to be homesick, and it's okay to need help through that homesickness. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a turn, because I want to make sure we cover some other issues. One of the things is, I want to start with you, Eric. A lot of these kids are arriving from small communities. And, we're arriving in the big city. I mean, Murfreesboro is now the big city and has big city problems, has big city issues. How do you address the parents as well as students, we need to be a little bit different as far as our safety issues here in Murfreesboro than we maybe needed to be in Manchester or wherever small town you happen to be from, Tullahoma. How do you address that?
Sure. Well, a couple of things. One of them we mentioned about customs. When they first come here, they get a presentation on safety here just from the day one that they come in. But we need to think about it as a small city. This is a small city. It doesn't have borders on it. It is open, and anything that can happen outside the campus can happen in the campus as well. And along those lines, it's important for them to have some situational awareness on there. Most of these are just small things like small crimes of opportunity. Somebody leaves their computer, somebody takes it, things like that. But you've got to be aware and be a little vigilant on that, especially walking at night, getting out at night, and things like that.
That's a huge one. I mean, I went to Baylor, and I was telling somebody today, it's kind of crazy, because really, I didn't realize this until our babysitter was over the other night, but you really think MTSU is your campus. You don't realize what's even here in Murfreesboro. As when I was at Baylor, I mean, there was Waco, but we never knew what was out there. I went to Baylor. I was inside that community. But sometimes that community bleeds inside the university, and you've got to be vigilant, especially as people from these small towns.
Sure.
Now, the last question I want to get with Lisa, and that's, what are the other big adjustment issues is roommates? People don't think about that. But here, all of a sudden, you've got people that don't have the same beliefs, don't have necessarily the same family values that you do. How do you deal with that? Do you have programs to deal with that and help students adjust to that change?
Well, I would first encourage the student that even though it may seem not logical, it's often easier to live with someone you've not met before than it is to live with maybe your best friend from high school.
There you go.
But certainly we want them to know that it's important to go in with the idea of being open-minded. MTSU has a commitment to diversity, and that's another thing we address in our orientation program. So use that as an opportunity to learn about someone else's background, culture, philosophies. It's a great way to expand your own horizons, your own philosophies.
Right.
The golden rule kind of is principle here. Just make sure that you're respectful, treat someone like you want to be treated. And I think it's also important that people know to set ground rules early. Decide what you want to do about sharing food or how you want to handle visitors that may come in. And I would just throw out there too, there's a really great book. It's called The Naked Roommate that was written by Harlan Cohen. It's a great read for students or their parents that addresses a lot of those transition issues with encountering a new person who's now going to be living with you around the clock.
That's really interesting, because I've been married 15 years, and even being married, it's, I had roommates in college. It's always a change. But I do think that's something that a lot of people are very scared about. I remember when I entered Baylor 25 years ago, it was a big deal, or 20 years ago, it was a big deal, and it was a big issue to try and figure out how you're going to fit in with these people, because it's a much different thing. And I came from Dallas to Waco, which is a smaller town. I can't even imagine doing what my dad did, coming from a very small town in Louisiana to Baylor, which wasn't at the time a huge school, arriving at MTSU, which is what now?
27,000
students. That's a city in and of itself. There's a lot of cities that aren't that big. We're going to be right back after these messages. We're going to take a little bit more of a look at these social issues that are facing kids in college. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health in Today's Woman. Tonight we're discussing the transition to college. Now, in our last segment, we talked about transitioning to college from high school. this segment, I really want to focus on when you are at college, some of the issues that these college students face. Now, to help me better understand this, I have invited Lisa Schrader back to discuss some of the challenges that these kids are facing here at MTSU. So first of all, I want to say thank you for being here.
Sure.
And I want to tell you thank you for, y'all are doing an amazing job here. I think y'all have done such a tremendous job at taking care of the students who are here. That it's such a change from when I was in college, and I think it's something that y'all need to be very proud of what y'all are accomplishing here. Now, I want to talk about some of the issues that I think are really facing college kids, and the top one that I think has been going on for the last 25 years, that's underage drinking, or just even drinking in general in college. How are y'all addressing that issue here at MTSU?
We really try to address it from two different angles. We have an educational angle where we're doing presentations in classrooms, residence halls, to student organizations on risk reduction with alcohol. And then we have an environmental angle, which is really all about altering the surroundings as a way to try to influence positive decision making and reduce risky decision making. Right. So to further kind of elaborate and explain what that means, one example is that there's a national phenomenon that students always think other college students drink much more heavily than they do.
Right.
If you know what the true norms are, you can then craft a media campaign about those. So we spent some time to do a web-based anonymous survey of our students to find out how much alcohol they're actually consuming. And we found that by and large, 2 out of 3 of them, if they go to a party, are only drinking 0, 1, 2, or 3 alcoholic beverages, which is not excessive.
Right.
But we use those numbers to then draw our media campaign so that students are aware this is what is really typical of our students. And they don't have to feel this false sense of peer pressure to go through this rite of passage that you have to drink heavily all the time in order to have the true college experience, because that's not the case.
And I think that's really interesting because it's something that I hadn't thought about, was the fact that really a lot of students feel like I'm supposed to drink. It's college, it's a rite of passage, and that's not necessarily true. There's a lot of things that you can do that are alternatives to drinking. And more importantly, rather than trying to say no drinking, we're trying to say be safe with what you're doing. Yeah. Like you mentioned, we were discussing at the break a little bit, not everybody's student here is underage. Correct. A lot of them are, older students.
Half of them are legally able to purchase and use alcohol.
And so we want to make sure that we're not just talking about those that are underage, we're also talking about those that are of age, making sure they're making healthy choices and doing things properly, correct?
Correct, yes. We want to make sure that they know things like eating before and during drinking, that they're limiting the number of drinks that they consume. Another way that we're trying to address this issue is to give students alternatives. There's kind of a mindset that there's nothing to do except drink. So we provide free, fun social activities during late night, weekend, peak drinking hours. So that students who don't want to use alcohol or maybe don't want to that night can go bowling. They can go play putt-putt. They can go see a movie for free because the university has provided that opportunity.
That's great. I think that's something that's really neat that the MTSU is doing. That's a great idea. Now, I want to take a little bit of a turn here and look at another issue I think that really is a problem at MTSU. Not just MTSU, all over the country. And I think a lot of times we tend to lump this into the state universities or the big universities, but it occurs everywhere. And that is the whole idea of date rape. And I think that does have some connection to the drinking issue. How do y'all educate your female students, not necessarily just male and female students, on how to deal with these issues?
Well, it happens all too often, so we really make a point to let our students know general safety tips like traveling with groups, being with your friends, making sure you have a plan to look out for each other and nobody ever gets left behind. And then also safety tips like being aware of what you're drinking. You don't want to take a drink from someone you don't know. You don't want to leave a drink unattended where somebody might be able to put a date rape drug in it. But also keeping in mind that alcohol primarily will be the only substance a perpetrator would need to commit an assault.
Now, one of the things I want to make sure that we get across here is that just because we don't want students to feel like they did something wrong.
Correct.
You know what? This happens, but we just want to make sure you're safe. We don't want you to ever have to deal with this situation. We're not here to judge you and say you're doing something wrong. And I think that's very important because a lot of girls do feel like, what I do wrong? Not necessarily anything. We don't want you to ever have to deal with that situation.
Absolutely.
Now, the other thing I noticed, I was hearing the other day about, they talk about this beautiful facility actually being the STD clinic. What are y'all doing here at MTSU to try and address this issue of STDs in the college population?
You know, every school that I've ever attended or have worked at has had that rumor that there are more STDs here than there are anywhere else. And in most cases, that's not the case. Certainly at MTSU, that's just a fraction of what our clinic providers see. But even one case is one too many. It's one that would have been preventable. So we do educational programming. That's the most common program request that I get. We provide free condoms for students, free lubricants for students, and then we have free HIV and low-cost STD tests for students who may need those.
That's great. MTSU has really done some amazing things to try and provide for the health of their students. And I want to say thank you to Lisa and to Eric for the tremendous job they're doing here at MTSU for those students. We're going to be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Health in Today's Woman. Tonight we have focused on the transition to college. This can be a very difficult time for both students as well as parents. I've been very honored to have two very special people who are here at MTSU join me tonight. One is Dr. Eric Clark, who is the Medical Director for Student Health Services here at Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I've also been joined by Ms. Lisa Schrader, who is the Director of Health Promotion here at MTSU. It's amazing what we have done in college life to where we're having a facility like this that we filmed out tonight. If you want to learn more about this facility, they do have a YouTube video which can be accessed on the web, and we will provide you that on a billboard. It is amazing what we are seeing in college today, and I really want to say thank you for the job that y'all are doing to this community, and we really do respect as our children go to college, the things that y'all are doing. Thank you, and have a good night.